Hello, my soul brothers and soul sisters. This is a Ron Smith Investigate show. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Marsha McLean. She's the author and founder of Grandma's 2.0. The title of the book is Stories of Inspirations, Life Lessons, and Wisdom from Grandma. Today we're going to talk about the invisible war, and we're going to talk about mental health issues and as well as suicide. One of the things that kind of hit me real hard and over the last couple of months, as you're well aware of, is Stephen Twitch Boss. He was a executive producer, famous dancer. He was a family man of three. He was college educated. He had all the box checked of what we would like to think of being a success. And one of the things that we didn't know that he had a secret, and the secret was that he was going through some issues that he could not talk to anyone about. Today, we're going to deal with a different perspective from a male perspective, and Dr. McLean is going to talk about the female perspective of what it means to go through depression, even having suicide thoughts, et cetera, et cetera. From the male perspective, I like to start off with, even from a little child, we were told big boys don't cry. Mm-hmm. And as a man, we were told to suck it up and push through it, or cowboy up, all these other things, which made us emotional detached from our families, from our work, and from our social perspective. Dr. McLean, what do you think about that from the female perspective?
Well, as a woman, to me, it's important, I think, that men show some kind of sensitivity, some kind of emotion. It really bothers me as a woman when men don't do that. And the reason I say that is because I have sons. I have two sons, for example, and I want them to tell me if something's going on with them, please. And then as a female who had, I'm a married woman. My husband grew up in a family with predominantly women, but had those similar issues of not sharing emotions. As a woman, to me, it kind of takes away from the relationship. I want to know how my man is feeling, okay? Because if I can't, there's no way I can try to help him.
From the man perspective is that we want to be your Superman. Mm-hmm. We want to be the king as you are queen. Mm-hmm. And we want to have the position that we got it all under control. Mm-hmm. Even though, it's almost like the proverbial duck. Is that we cool as a cucumber above the water, mm-hmm. but we paddle like hell below it. Mm-hmm. And that is part of I would say the dichotomy of a man is that we don't want to show weakness. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that, through our education and research is, Black men don't want to appear to be weak. And because of a lot of things, because that might be used against us, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because we want to be the boss, so to speak, and so we don't show anything because we don't want you to think less of us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I get that. As an African American woman in the country that typically looks down on us because of the color of our skin, I get it. However, I think what men need to start thinking about is if I'm out there in the world, I can show, we call it code switching. Okay. Right. And so if I'm out there in the world, I can have this one persona. But if I'm at home with people that I know that love me, that have my back, no matter what, as Beyonce said, my ride or die. Okay. Okay. If I know that I have somebody at home that's like that, then that'll be at least the one person, the few people that I can kind of allow to see who I really am and be myself and share, whatever issues I'm having. It is so important that we have emotional awareness because for me as an educator, mm-hmm. I see children that experience that and think that little boys are not supposed to cry and boys are not supposed to do this, but what that does to them is it really hurts them in the long run because then they don't show any emotion. They don't show their woman that they love them because we're not supposed to show any emotion. That's dumb. I mean, I'm sorry. That makes no sense to me. But we have to show that we care about people.
One of the things that I took some notes, by the way. I want to read some notes.
Okay.
That some of the issues, reason why, and I use myself as an example. I am the way I am. Poverty, family dysfunctions, traumatic early childhood, police brutality, decease of a young one, and financial struggles are part of the ingredients that kind of mold the, I would say, typical Black man, because we know that we are just as diverse as any other ethnic group. You know, we have our people who are in poverty. We have people who are middle class. We have people who are rich.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And one of the things that struck me about this issue is that there is no way to hide in any economic group. There's people who are suffering in silence from this invisible war from all the perspective. So how, from your perspective,
Mm-hmm.
how can we address those issues and help, men that I know exist?
Well, I believe in prevention. That's the first thing.
Okay.
And so as an educator, as a mother of 2 sons, as a grandmother of a lot of boys, okay, I have 7 grandchildren, and only 2 of them are girls.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
And so that is important. This issue is really important to me because of those people in my life. And I think that we need to start that early. We need to allow them to show their feelings about things. We need to talk to them. We need to ask them questions, see what's going on with them. There was a situation, and I can't remember who it was right now off the top of my head, but I was thinking, I know what it was. It was the young man who killed the 3 football players.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And I was thinking, and the dad said, when he came home, because I think he's from Hampton, when he came home, I noticed there was something wrong with him, and I asked him what was going on, but he wouldn't tell me. Now, as a parent, I know as my mother, I always say she's always up in my business. Well, right. So as a parent, that's something that we have to do for our children and our spouses. We have to be up in their business so we can find out if there's something going on. Because when I think about the gentleman that you were talking to me about earlier, why didn't anyone know that he was having some issues?
Well,
how is it that no one knew that?
One of the things I can, as a TV show said, speak for yourself, is since I was raised by a single parent, my mother raised me, and I didn't have a male role model or counterpart to actually discuss some issues, to be able to be open. Therefore, until basically I was able to share some things with another man that I felt comfortable with. And part of the reason is that having a place where I called it the non-judgment zone, which is very difficult. And I gave you the example earlier when we were talking off the show, is that if we are peers and I can promote it above you, and the issues that we talked about as I was peers, would you use those things against me? And a lot of times and that's the reason why we don't want to appear to be weak, because we don't want to use these things against us. And as sharing those things with another mate, it'd be difficult because maybe you start looking at me differently. You're not going to look at me as the pillar that you thought you married, or the pillar that you thought that I was be able to head up this organization. And until we destigmatize getting, self-care, getting counseling, or talking to a spiritual leader, this atmosphere will always exist. And one of the things that, as you mentioned before, that you start seeing some things in younger children that most times even parents are not aware of. Now, I read a story, and it visually, this was a story about this young man who had attempted to commit suicide. And he told his mother about it. And she said, "Hey, you belong to the church. You're saved. God got you. what you talking about? And that took him back into a shell because he was reaching out to someone that he trusted, but she didn't have the tools, in my perspective, to get him to seek more counseling and maybe some more men who are, I want to say, appears to have themselves, mentally and spiritually and financially together. And one of the things that I encourage, especially single parents, is to seek out mentors for your sons. And as we know now, just putting your kid into a sports, football, basketball, track, etc., is not really the answer, because we're learning these men have issues themselves.
Yeah.
So as an educator, if you had someone that you knew within the education system, how would you direct that to a parent that they might need to take a step further in counseling, et cetera, or what?
So I've been an educator of children in 3rd and 4th grade. I was a teacher assistant in my first experience. We had a little boy named Bobby in that classroom. And I always tell my students about Bobby, my college students about Bobby, because I always say Bobby made me the woman that I am today. Bobby was a very challenging young man. He had all kinds of issues from home to school. He couldn't relate to the other children. He would fight them, all these kinds of things, right? And what the school wanted to do with Bobby is keep him in the principal's office, right? And that is not the answer. Right. For me, I kept, because I was a teacher assistant in the classroom, I'm going somewhere with this story. So
sure.
As a teacher assistant in the classroom, the teacher said, well, you just take him outside and run with him and do whatever, And so I did that. But then I became frustrated myself. And I'm like, look, there's got to be a better way to help Bobby here. Right. And what do we need to do? So I went to the guidance counselor and asked her, what can I do with him? How can I help him? Realize after doing that and talking with the parent, I asked the parent if there was somebody in her community or if there's somebody at the school that she would be willing to talk to. The parent did not want to talk to anybody, said her son was okay, and I understood that. But as a teacher, there's this thing called an IEP that we can do, and it doesn't have to come through the parent. You want to start with the parent and give them that option. But as the teacher, we can also recommend and what we call refer a child for further services,
right?
And to see if they need help. And so that's what I did in that particular situation.
We're going to go take a commercial break at this time. And after the break, we're going to find out what is an IAP.
Okay.
Cammie's Closet, Cammie's Closet, Cammie's Closet, an upscale resale clothing, vintage clothing, handbag, and shoes online store. Cammie's Closet, spelled with a K, not with a T, is a small upscale resale boutique that carry gently used name brand clothing, vintage clothing, shoes, and handbags. Cammie's Closet is all about rediscovering, upcycling, and selling clothes of all kinds. Cammie's Closet believes it's an underappreciated form of clothing, and they started a win-win for everyone. The true value of resale. Cammie's Closet is very aficionado, passionate about rediscovering, upcycling, and reselling upscale resale and vintage clothing of all kinds. Go to cammiescloset.com. That's K, not a T, A-M-I-S-K, not a C, L-O-S-E-T. cammiescloset.com.
Welcome back to the Ron Smith Investigate Show. We're talking to Dr. McLean here. She is the CEO of Grandmothers 2.0, as well as she's an author. We're going to give you more details on how you can get that book. It's a very exciting book also. Dr. McLean, you were talking about IEP.
IEP.
And I'm quite sure that's something that within the school system.
Right. Actually, I teach a class around working with children with disabilities.
Okay.
And an IEP is a federal mandate, if you will, for lack of a better word, that actually comes from a law called IDEA. So Individuals with Disability with Education Act.
Okay.
And it was enacted, some years ago. It all came out of the civil rights movement as a result of that, because if you recall, civil rights movement was about helping people to get access to certain things, and so part of that, families who had children with disabilities got it on the bandwagon. When we hear this story, we don't usually hear that it came out of the civil rights movement. But as a Black woman, I think it's important that we share that little tidbit that it did actually come from that.
Right.
And so, everybody gets on the bandwagon and say, oh, wait a minute, but what about our rights? And so as a result, people with disabilities got on that bandwagon as well. And so from that, that law, children in the school system are entitled to, every American citizen is entitled to what we call a free, appropriate public education.
Right.
And Bobby needed some help.
Okay.
There's a variety of different services that are offered, and I won't go into all of that because that could take another 30, 40 minutes to talk about. But it is so important that parents know that this exists.
Yes.
And that their children may be eligible for those services. Okay. And so even it could help a child with mental illness that we don't even know about that exists. So if a teacher suspects that there's something going on with that child, like I suspected there's something going on with Bobby, you report it. You talk to the parents. That's the right thing to do.
Right.
But if the parents are saying, well, no, we don't want to, they can deny the services.
Right.
However, as the teacher in that classroom, a teacher assistant, I encouraged the teacher to get someone to come in and observe Bobby. And that's what he needed, to kind of see what was going on, an expert to see what was going on with him. And so that we could avoid a whole lot of mental issues if we did that, and we did it more often.
What are some of the signs that we should look for in you as an educator and your students and as parents that we need to look for in our children, and as grandparents, some of the things we need to look for in our grandchildren? What's some of the things that you think we should be looking out for?
Well, there's so many of them, but let's say, for example, if a child is kind of excludes him or herself from the other children,
right,
maybe even in the family, there's something going on there. What's going on? We want to question that. So what's going on? We don't know. Maybe there's nothing going on. But if you don't question and there is, we'll think, oh my God, I wish I would have asked. Just like that young man's father from the Virginia UVA situation.
Yeah, University
he
of
said,
Virginia.
I wish I would have probed a little deeper and asked more questions. If a child is hurting him or herself. So like in early childhood, we see children that will be upset and they'll hit their heads on the wall. That is not appropriate behavior. Right. So there's something that maybe the child's seen someone else do it. Maybe that's their coping mechanism. Well, that is an inappropriate coping mechanism, because then he could do further damage. Right. So, something like that. Even if, let's say it's a child who's maybe they're acting out, where they're hitting other people or whatever. That's another inappropriate. So it could be a variety of different things that we see in children that happen or that they're doing, that it only takes one little situation. Now, just because there may be one incident, the other thing that we want to tell parents to be aware of, if it happens one time, that's no big deal. But right. If it's a recurring behavior, right. Then you really want to take a look at it and say, okay, there may be something going on here. And, take the time to try to see what's happening. And if there's nothing happening, then great. But get a doctor involved, and that sort of thing.
And speaking of doctors, one of the things that I know that we are stigmatized, that if we need medication for our mental illness, whether we're bipolar or any other depression, et cetera, there's a stigma that we have. And I wouldn't say only in the Black community, but since we are expert in that community, we're gonna look at it from that perspective. Is that how do we overcome that issue?
That's a good one. And I don't know that I know the answer. I can only speak from my own opinion about it. And we have to be, have you heard of Brene Brown?
Regarding
she's an author and she writes these books about, I think one is Dare to Lead. One is about the power of vulnerability.
Okay.
About being vulnerable. And that is something that we kind of shy away from, and men especially. I know
that's the reason why I'm laughing. Yeah. I'm not laughing at what you're saying.
Right.
I'm laughing at like, oh boy,
right,
you just kicked up a can of worms.
Exactly. Right. It's like, oh my God, do I have to be vulnerable? But the thing is, it's okay. I think we have to make up in our mind that it's okay for us to be vulnerable to certain people. Now, there's certain people you don't want to be vulnerable to. I get that. Like, you don't want to say to your commanding officer, oh yeah, by the way, no, you don't want to do that. Right. But, there are certain people, and you have to have trust in those people. And remember earlier we were talking about your spouse or your son or right. As a mother, I want my sons to feel vulnerable and to come to me and say, well, I'm having this issue with, and that's okay. We can talk about it, and maybe we can, if we need outside help, then we can get outside help. And if you don't want me telling about it, I won't tell anybody. You're my son. I want to protect you, But again, we got to open up. I think that has some power when you are able to be vulnerable. I think that gives you some power. It's controlling your own life. It's not allowing all the things that happen to take control of it, but you're taking control of it. I mean, that's how I see it.
Well, no, that's a very good point. And to add to that is that one of the things that helped me is to have friends outside of, let's say, I was in law enforcement in my first life. Having friends outside of law enforcement helped me. So I didn't have to, deal with other law enforcement personnel knowing things about me. Well, we had so much fun with this conversation. I'm quite sure this is not going to be the first conversation that we had. But one of the things that I'd like to wrap up with is how do we get help? We need to have a trusted friend. We need to go to our spiritual leaders. And there's barbershop therapy.
Yes.
And there's also men's group therapy, music, meditation. And actually writing a journal would help you. I do have some things for our family and friends. Check in on your family and friends. Be an active listener. And the one thing that I have learned how to do is following up on, if we had a serious discussion, we need to follow up on that and make sure that people are all right and show compassion, sympathy, and actually acts of kindness. And I want to ask Dr. McLean to talk about her book.
Oh, I would love to. Thanks for asking. Yes. So this book is a labor of love. I don't know if you can see it or not. I'm trying to put it in front of the camera here, but it's about grandmas. And so my organization is called Grandmas 2.0. I am the founder and CEO. And the reason I started the organization is because people always said to me, well, you don't look like a grandma. You don't act like a grandma.
You don't.
So I wanted to say, what does a grandma look like and act like? So I call it 2.0. The 2.0 version is always like an advanced version, a better version, whatever.
Yes.
We're upgraded. Okay. But what that means is basically the stories within this book are stories of real grandmas. Now, I like to always say, there's some celebrity grandmas, like Beyonce's mom, Tina Lawson, right? Yeah, beautiful woman, but not your typical grandma. Jada Pickett's mom, not your typical grandma. She was on Instagram in a bikini. What grandma do you know is in a bikini? Okay, but anyway, but in this book, there are real life grandmas. I mean, we have grandmas that are a couple of them are professors. One of them is a pediatrician, and they talk about their stories, their lives as a grandma, when they first heard that they were going to be grandmas and how they reacted to that. Some were accepting, some were like, oh my God, no, sort of thing. Because society has this stigma about grandmas, that we are old, that we are not fly, honey. But guess what? We are the 2.0 version. And the 2.0 version is fly.
Yes.
But pick up our book. We're at Grandmas 2.0. And we have to spell the word point out because you can't do the 2.0 in the technology, whatever you call that stuff. Anyway, I don't even know what you call it, but it's grandmas, the word grandmas with an S, the number 2, the word point, and then O, big letter O, .com. And then our email is the same, grandmas 2.0 spelled out at gmail.com. This is where you can find our book. It's on our website. And please look us up on Facebook and on Instagram, Grandmas 2.0. And thank you, Dr. Smith. I've had so much fun. Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
I've had so much fun
we have to
talking
do this again.
about a subject that is so serious. But yes.
Well, we'd like to thank you and I thank the doctor for coming in. And we definitely will have her again. And we'd like to thank you for the precious gift of your time and thanks for spending it with us. Till next time, peace.